The man sat quietly during his termination meeting, listening as the younger executive across the table leaned back with a smirk. "We can hire 3 junior engineers for your salary," the new chief technology officer said. "Nothing personal, just cost-cutting." His name was Victor Hale, 55 years old, lead systems engineer at Veltria Housing. For 18 years, he had been the foundation of their entire technological world. The networks, the databases, the security layers, every part of that company's backbone carried his fingerprints. Yet, in that cold office, they told him he was no longer worth the expense. Across from him sat Graham Vickers, a man who had only been with the company for 6 months. Graham wore sharp designer glasses, carried a resume polished with an MBA from Cornell, and spoke in the language of efficiency and modern strategy. To him, Victor was not a builder of systems or a guardian of stability. He was just a number on a spreadsheet. Beside Graham was Diane from Human Resources. She slid a folder across the table with a practiced smile. 2 months' salary, plus accrued vacation time, she said. A generous severance, as they called it. Victor nodded and accepted the folder. "Is that all you have to say?" Graham asked, almost disappointed. Perhaps he had expected anger, protest, or threats of legal action, something to prove his own importance. Victor's voice was steady. "What would you like me to say? It seems straightforward enough." The 2 executives exchanged glances, puzzled by his calm. But what they didn't understand was that Victor wasn't calm. He was finished. There is a difference. They spoke of transition, of how perhaps he might consult for the young engineers who were supposed to replace him. Victor gave a polite answer, but he knew in his heart he would not return. When he cleared out his desk, 18 years of work and memories fit into a single cardboard box. Most of his colleagues avoided eye contact, afraid that his fate might soon be theirs. That evening, he sat on the wooden deck of his home, overlooking Lake Ontario. The sun was setting, copper light spreading across the water. In his hand was a glass of bourbon, and behind him, his wife Elaine placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "What will you do now?" she asked softly. Victor stared at the horizon. Something will turn up. But deep inside, he knew something else. The company had no idea what they had just lost. Victor had not merely worked at Veltria Housing. He had built it, piece by piece, from the very beginning. He had started back when the company was still known as Bayview Properties, a modest real estate firm with just 4 apartment complexes and a dozen employees. Their technology consisted of 2 computers, a fax machine, and a single dial-up connection. That was the world Victor walked into 18 years earlier, after leaving a consulting job in Syracuse. The founder, Harold Bay, had looked him in the eye and said, "We're going to expand. I need someone who can build us something solid." Victor had taken those words to heart. Over nearly 2 decades, he turned that fragile setup into a robust, integrated system that managed every part of the business: tenant applications, background checks, maintenance requests, and automated rent collection across 63 properties in 4 states. When the company grew, he adapted. When it stumbled, he stabilized. And through every storm, his system held strong. But 5 years earlier, Harold had retired. His son Justin sold the company to a private equity firm, and with that sale came a new name, Veltria Housing. The new owners kept Victor because they recognized the strength of what he had built. Yet as new executives arrived, the winds began to shift. Long-term stability no longer mattered as much as short-term numbers. Quarterly reports became more important than steady foundations. Victor began to sense the warning signs. It started with small things. He requested a documentation team to preserve the knowledge of the intricate system he had designed. The answer was always the same: "Too expensive. We'll revisit it next quarter." But that quarter never came. Then came the consultants, young men in sharp suits, armed with phrases like disruption, digital transformation, and cloud leverage. They listened half-heartedly to Victor's explanations of his architecture, then recommended off-the-shelf solutions that would never fit the custom framework holding Veltria together. Victor pushed back, showing them the custom code, the hidden redundancies, the safeguards that only years of care could create. But eventually, the invitations to meetings stopped coming. Decisions were made without him. Slowly, they were pushing him aside. At home, Elaine noticed it before he did. One evening over dinner, she said quietly, "They're easing you out, Victor. You need to prepare." He shook his head. "They need me. No one else understands how the whole system fits together." She looked at him with concern. "That might be the very reason they want you gone." 6 months before his termination, the board hired Graham Vickers as the new Chief Technology Officer. A man from the banking software world, he spoke with certainty about standardization and legacy replacement. He brought in 3 junior engineers, fresh out of college, bright but inexperienced. They shadowed Victor, asking questions he patiently answered, though he knew they could not see the depth or complexity beneath the surface. It had taken him years to weave those systems together, years of foresight and hard lessons. And now, in a matter of months, they expected children to carry the weight of it all. Victor should have seen it coming the moment Graham appeared at his office door and casually suggested, "Quick meeting tomorrow morning, just a quarterly check-in." It was never just a check-in. 2 weeks passed after Victor's termination. He spent quiet mornings updating his resume, something he hadn't done in almost 2 decades. The house felt strange during the day, too quiet, as though time itself had paused. Then the first call came. The name on the screen, Graham Vickers. Victor let it ring into voicemail. "Victor, this is Graham. We're experiencing issues with the tenant portal. The junior team is working on it, but they're having trouble understanding parts of your code. Could you give us a quick call back? Just a short consultation." Victor deleted the message without a word. That afternoon, 3 more calls came, each voicemail more urgent than the last. By evening, his old colleague Alan, the database administrator he had personally hired years ago, sent a text. "System's been down all day. Maintenance requests aren't processing. Graham's losing it." Victor placed the phone face down on his desk and said nothing. The next morning, Diane from Human Resources called. Her voice carried the same polished calm as always, though now it was threaded with unease. "Victor, I hope you're doing well. We'd like to discuss a temporary consulting arrangement to help with some current system issues. The compensation would be generous." Victor asked one question. "How generous?" $300 per hour, 4-hour minimum." "I'll think about it," he replied, and ended the call. He sat at the kitchen table, staring out at the lake. Elaine placed a cup of coffee before him. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Victor looked into the dark water in his cup. "I'm thinking they're finally realizing what I'm worth." Over the next 3 days, the calls multiplied. Graham, Diane, even Justin Bay, who still sat on the board. Their voices carried desperation. The tenant portal remained broken. The maintenance scheduling system was collapsing under errors. Payment processing had failed entirely, and tenants across 4 states were unable to pay their rent. Victor stayed silent. On the 4th evening, his doorbell rang. He opened it to see Graham himself standing there, shoulders tense, glasses crooked, suit wrinkled in a way that betrayed sleepless nights. "Victor," Graham began, voice strained, "I apologize for showing up unannounced, but this is an emergency. The entire system is down. Nothing is working. The team is lost. We need your help. The board has authorized a substantial consulting fee, $500 an hour. Whatever it takes." Victor leaned against the doorframe, studying the man who had so casually dismissed him only weeks earlier. He thought about the cardboard box in his garage that held 18 years of his life. He thought about Graham's smirk in that cold office. Nothing personal, just cost-cutting. "I'm sorry to hear about your troubles," Victor said evenly, "but I have an interview tomorrow. Something will turn up." And with that, he closed the door, leaving Graham standing stunned on the porch. For the first time since his dismissal, Victor felt a calm settle over him. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just clarity. He would no longer save those who had discarded him. The very next day, an unexpected email arrived. It was from Lawrence Devlin, Director of Technology at Devlin Systems, a smaller but ambitious competitor in the region. Victor read it twice before showing it to Elaine. "Victor, I've admired your work for years. We've heard what happened at Veltria, and I believe you could help us build something stronger. Would you be interested in meeting?" Victor replied, and the two men arranged to meet in a quiet coffee shop in downtown Rochester. Lawrence was straightforward, stirring his cup as he spoke. "That system you built at Veltria, it's legendary. Nobody else has anything close to it. We want to create something similar, but more modern, more resilient. And we need someone who knows how to build things the right way." Victor studied him carefully. "Why me? There are younger engineers out there. Cheaper ones." Lawrence laughed softly. "We tried that route, hired 3 young talents with glowing resumes. They built us something that looked sleek, but it collapsed the moment 100 users logged in at once. We don't need cheap, Victor. We need reliable." Then he placed the offer on the table. Chief Systems Architect, full benefits, stock options, and a salary 20% higher than what Victor had earned at Veltria. It was a generous offer. Almost too generous. But Victor sensed sincerity in Lawrence's words, a respect that Veltria had long since abandoned. By the next morning he accepted. Meanwhile, Veltria's chaos only deepened. Alan, loyal as ever, kept Victor informed through short, discreet texts. Portal still down. Payment system throwing errors. Consultants brought in. No progress. A week into his new role at Devlin, Victor received another call from Graham. This time, Graham's voice trembled with frustration. "Victor, this is serious. We've lost access to payment records for the past 3 months. Tenants are being billed incorrectly. The consultants say they need your input on the database structure. Please, we'll double whatever you're making at Devlin." Victor considered his answer before speaking. "Graham, I'm under an exclusive contract now. I can't help you." "This isn't about contracts," Graham pressed. "Is this about revenge? Are you enjoying watching us struggle?" Victor's voice was steady. "No, Graham, I'm not enjoying this, but you made a business decision. You decided my experience wasn't worth the cost. Now you're discovering what that decision truly means." There was silence on the line before Graham tried once more. "The board wants to discuss bringing you back. Full salary, signing bonus, everything." For a fleeting moment, Victor felt the old pull. Familiar halls, colleagues he had trained, a lifetime of work. But he knew the truth. Returning would change nothing. The same executives who had discarded him would still be waiting to cut costs the moment it suited them. "I appreciate the offer," Victor said quietly, "but I've made my choice." He ended the call, his hands steady now. There was no triumph, no bitterness, just certainty. Veltria had chosen its path, and he had chosen his. Not long after, the inevitable happened. Veltria's lawyers began circling. One evening, Victor answered a call from Graham that carried not just desperation, but something colder. "You know," Graham said, voice low, "there could be legal implications. If we find out you intentionally made our systems too complex, if you deliberately withheld documentation, it could be seen as sabotage. There are non-compete clauses, intellectual property agreements, things we could pursue." Victor listened without flinching. When he finally spoke, his words were measured, steady. "The system is exactly as it was when the company refused, time after time, to fund a documentation team. Every line of code belongs to Veltria, as my contract specified. I have taken nothing with me except my experience. If you believe otherwise, Graham, have your lawyers contact mine." He hung up. For a long while he sat in silence, not from fear but from anger he had not allowed himself to feel until that moment. They had discarded him, and now in their collapse they dared to accuse him of being the cause. At Devlin, things were different. Victor was starting fresh, building a system from the ground up, fully documented, properly trained, with redundancies in place so no one person would ever carry all the weight he once did alone. Here, he wasn't just building technology. He was building trust. A month later, an unexpected figure appeared in his new office doorway. Alan, the database administrator Victor had hired over a decade ago, stood there with a laptop bag slung over his shoulder. "Got time for lunch?" he asked quietly. At a small deli near the office, over sandwiches, Alan leaned in and lowered his voice. "It's worse than you think." Victor watched him carefully as Alan explained. "They've lost access to historical data going back 3 years. Backups are corrupted. The consultants say they may need to rebuild everything from scratch." Victor wasn't surprised. The system had multiple redundancies, but only if the process was followed step by step. Skip one, just one, and the entire recovery collapsed. It had been built that way deliberately, to protect tenant data from careless or unauthorized hands. "That's not all," Alan continued. He slid his laptop across the table and opened a series of emails. "I found these while trying to help the consultants, emails between Graham and the board. He was planning your termination for months." Victor read in silence. Graham had written detailed notes about eliminating legacy staff. He had even named Victor directly as the first to go. In one email, Graham assured the board, "Hale's custom systems are unnecessarily complex. He has made himself indispensable by design, not by necessity. We can replace him with cheaper engineers and transition to off-the-shelf solutions within 6 months. Projected savings, over $1 million annually." Victor closed the laptop slowly. His face gave nothing away. "There's more," Alan added. "The private equity firm that owns Veltria, they're preparing to sell. They brought Graham in specifically to cut costs, make the company look more profitable, and dress it up for a quick flip." At last, it all made sense. The resistance to documentation, the obsession with cost-cutting, the blind push for replacement. Victor looked at Alan. "Why are you showing me this?" Alan's voice was quiet but firm. "Because I quit yesterday. And I'm not the only one. Half the IT department has already left. Veltria's biggest client, Westbrook Properties, is considering jumping ship. They've lost faith." Victor leaned back, letting the weight of it all sink in. Veltria was crumbling not because of him, but because of their own arrogance and short-sightedness. And now, even those who once looked away in silence were leaving. Not long after that conversation, Veltria's collapse began to accelerate. A few days later, Alan sent Victor another message. "Westbrook is ready to pull the plug. They're preparing to terminate their contract." Westbrook Properties wasn't just another client. They represented nearly 30% of Veltria's revenue. Losing them would not only cripple the company's finances, but also destroy its reputation. When Victor shared the news with Lawrence Devlin, the director of technology at Devlin Systems, Lawrence leaned forward in his chair. "If Westbrook leaves Veltria, where do you think they'll go?" Victor raised an eyebrow. "They'll be looking for stability. A system they can trust." Lawrence nodded. "Exactly. And we can give it to them." Within a week, Lawrence was on the phone with Jeffrey Westbrook, the CEO of Westbrook Properties. The man was direct. "Veltria has failed us. Payment errors, portal downtime, tenant complaints. We can't keep risking our business on them. Can Devlin handle our portfolio?" It was a daunting question. Westbrook managed more than 10,000 units across the Northeast, double the scale Devlin currently handled. Victor spoke honestly. "Our system isn't fully ready yet, it's halfway there, but with the right resources, the right team, and enough time, we can do it." Jeffrey pressed. "How much time?" Victor thought carefully. 12 weeks. We'll need to stage the migration in phases. Bring over the smaller regions first, then expand. That way, no disruption for tenants." After a pause, Jeffrey agreed. 12 weeks. Don't let us down." That night, Victor barely slept. He covered his desk with sketches, diagrams, and migration pathways. He mapped redundancies, considered scale, and wrote notes deep into the morning. By dawn, he had a plan. A hybrid system that could grow with Westbrook's needs and never collapse under the weight of short-sighted design. When he presented it, Lawrence studied it carefully. "This is ambitious," he said, "but I see something here." He tapped the page. "Documentation. You've added 3 extra weeks just for it." Victor nodded. "It's non-negotiable. That's where Veltria failed. We document everything, train the team, and make sure no one person carries all the knowledge. If we cut corners here, it will haunt us." Lawrence gave a slow smile. "Then we'll do it your way." For weeks, the office buzzed with energy. They hired 5 more engineers, including 2 who had recently left Veltria. Alan built a custom migration tool to move tenant data safely into the new system. Victor designed modular architecture so every piece could stand strong on its own. For the first time in a long time, he felt the old fire return. Not the burden of carrying a company on his shoulders, but the excitement of building something new, something meant to last. 10 weeks into the 12-week timeline, Devlin Systems was nearly ready for the first stage of migration. The smallest region of Westbrook's portfolio, 2,000 units in western New York, would be moved first. If it worked, the rest would follow. That afternoon, Victor opened his inbox and found an unexpected email. The sender, Justin Bay, the former owner's son who still sat on Veltria's board. "Victor, I want to apologize for how things ended. The board was misled about what it would mean to let you go. Graham has been removed as CTO. We're struggling to recover, and Westbrook's departure will be devastating. If you're ever interested in returning, the door is open." Victor read the words slowly, then closed the email without replying. Veltria had made its choice, and now they were paying the price. The very next day, Lawrence called him into the office. A man Victor hadn't expected was waiting there, Jeffrey Westbrook himself. The CEO shook Victor's hand firmly. "So you're the architect everyone keeps talking about," Jeffrey said. "Lawrence tells me you've built us a system that won't crumble under pressure, something we can finally trust." "That's the plan," Victor answered simply. Jeffrey nodded, then leaned back. "You used to work at Veltria, didn't you?" "I did," Victor said carefully. "They're in serious trouble," Jeffrey continued. "The equity firm is trying to sell, but with us leaving, buyers are scarce. Except for one." Victor frowned slightly. "Who's that?" Lawrence answered. "Devlin Systems. We're considering an acquisition, at a fraction of what Veltria was valued at before your departure." Victor sat in silence, absorbing the weight of it. The very company that had dismissed him as expendable might soon come under his direction once again. Jeffrey leaned forward. "If the acquisition goes through, we'll need someone who understands both systems. Someone who can decide what to salvage and what to discard. Someone who knows how to do this right. Would you be willing?" Victor's voice was steady. "Yes. On one condition. This time we build it properly. Full documentation, proper training, no shortcuts." Lawrence gave a small smile. "Agreed. We've learned that lesson." Victor nodded once. No triumph, no bitterness. Just the quiet satisfaction of a man who knew that in the end, good work always speaks for itself. 6 months later, the sign above the old Veltria headquarters no longer bore the name that had once defined it. Instead it read, Devlin Integrated Property Management. The acquisition had gone through for less than a quarter of the price Veltria had once claimed to be worth. The executives who had signed Victor's termination papers were gone. Graham was nowhere to be found, and most of the board that had supported him had been quietly replaced. Victor walked the halls with Lawrence, passing familiar faces from his past. Some looked away in embarrassment. Others smiled faintly, relieved that someone capable had returned. A few nodded with quiet respect, remembering who had truly kept the systems alive all those years. When they reached the server room, the domain that had once been Victor's second home, Lawrence gestured toward the door. "Want to go in?" Victor shook his head. "No need. We'll be migrating everything soon enough." Later that morning in a large conference room, the remaining Veltria staff gathered for an announcement. Lawrence introduced Victor as the Chief Integration Officer, the man who would oversee the joining of two companies' systems into something stronger than either had ever known. "Many of you already know Victor," Lawrence said. "He built the backbone of this company and kept it alive for nearly 2 decades. Now he'll guide us forward, ensuring we build something better, something that lasts." Victor spoke briefly, his words steady. He told them there would be no shortcuts this time, No knowledge locked away, no single points of failure. Every process would be documented. Every team member would be trained. No one would be left behind. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The very company that had cut him loose for being too expensive was now depending on him to rebuild their foundation. A year later, Devlin Integrated Property Management had become the largest property management firm in the Northeast. The migration was complete. The systems Victor designed ran smoothly, fully documented and resilient. One crisp autumn morning, as red and gold leaves lined the shores of Lake Ontario, Victor sat across from Lawrence in the office. "The board approved your proposal," Lawrence said with a smile. "Next quarter we launch the technical education division. You'll have full autonomy to design the curriculum and hire the instructors." This had been Victor's one condition for staying. Not a bigger title, not more money, but the chance to pass on knowledge, to teach young engineers not only how to code, but how to build systems meant to last. "Thank you," Victor said quietly. "No," Lawrence replied. "Thank you. What you've built here isn't just technology. It's a culture, documentation, training, respect for craft. You've given us more than stability. You've given us a future." Later that afternoon, Victor packed up his integration office, preparing to move into his new role. As he carried the box out, Justin Bay appeared. "My father asked about you," Justin said. "He's retired in Florida now, but he still follows company news. He told me once that letting you go would be the greatest mistake this company could ever make." He was right. Victor gave a small nod. He didn't gloat, didn't say, "I told you so." There was no need. Driving home along the lake, he thought about value, the kind that isn't always visible until it's gone. The value of experience, the value of doing things right the first time. He hadn't sought revenge. He hadn't needed to. Instead, he had simply built something better. And in the end, that had been enough. Sometimes the best response to being undervalued is not anger, but proof. Proof that good work, done with care and patience, always outlasts short-sightedness. And as the autumn sun warmed the water, Victor knew he had done just that.